Hi there folks, Campbell Mattson from Location Homes based here in Taranaki with you today. Really glad to have the company of Stephanie Murray from SMM. SMM is formerly known as Stephanie Murray Mortgages. Stephanie is a director of SMM and a mortgage advisor. 4 years ago she began SMM and has a rapidly growing team who operate out of 6 locations around New Zealand, soon to be 8 I believe. Stephanie was originally a banker and she's been in the mortgage and lending industry for over 20 years and has always specialised in build finance. There is no situation that Steph or her team at SMM have not seen. Steph can speak from personal experience of building, developing and investing. She is the Vice President of the Taranaki Property Investors Association and is involved in many community-based mentoring activities, as well as organising and hosting SMM's many fundraising activities for local-based charity, the Roderick Hope Trust, which provides emergency housing to the vulnerable. So Steph, look, really appreciate your time today, and I'm excited to catch up with you and hear your unique and on the point comments about the landscape, particularly in relation to property finance that we find ourselves in today. Obviously, there's a lot of unknowns ahead of us, but I feel that you'd be most best placed to give us some insights into where we are and perhaps where we're going. So if you're happy, I might just jump straight into some questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Cam.
Hey, look, in no real particular order, I'll just start with this one here, Steph. What is the difference between financing a new build and an existing home?
So firstly, Campbell, thank you for having me today. It's a real honour to come and have a chat with you about what's going on out there at the moment in the market in this unprecedented time. I guess the main difference between purchasing a existing dwelling versus building a dwelling, there are a few differences in obviously how we finance it, but I'm going to keep it as really simple as possible. And basically say that instead of taking out one home loan to purchase the house that's existing, so if you're buying a house for $500,000 and you're borrowing $400,000, for example, you take out the home loan all at once to pay the vendor for the property. When it's a build, obviously you do that progressively. So usually you have the land, so you have one loan for the land, put your cash in at the start and borrow the remainder from the bank. And then the second loan, which is for the build, is drawn down progressively. So what that means is each time you receive an invoice from the builder, from the fixed price contract, is that the loan is then drawn down progressively from there. So you're paying for it bit by bit. So that's basically the difference in a home loan for an existing house versus a new build. So it's just done a little bit differently. You get it all approved up front, so there's no overruns, and that you know exactly where you're at in terms of how much you've got financed for the land and how much you've got financed for the build. There are also the restrictions that the Reserve Bank has put in place, which are currently in place. New builds are not part of that. So what that means is every bank can lend a certain percentage above 80% of their total amount. So once they get to that amount, that percentage that they're allowed to lend per month, for example, they can't lend anymore. So they're restricted, they can't lend anymore. So new builds are exempt to that. And what that means is that anyone borrowing over 80% is exempt from that, from the restrictions, which can mean obviously that it could be easier to get approved because the bank's got more funding to be able to do a build above 80% than an existing home. So that's probably the two main things. In terms of actual drawing down the actual mortgage. There's probably a few more things to go over, but that's the main difference on the two.
Cool. Well, thank you. Just on the difference in terms of the way the banks and of course government policy influence your ability to build versus buy. So what I take from your comments really is that there's an incentive, if you like, and there's motivation by the government to have new homes built. So they're making it easier and lowering the bar. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. So incentivizing the construction industry and obviously more houses to be built, because that's what we all need and what we all want, and obviously what the government wants. There is an undersupply of housing and has been an undersupply of housing. So the construction industry is obviously being pushed ahead by the fact that the the Reserve Bank, the government tells the Reserve Bank, and the Reserve Bank says, okay, you can lend any amount above 80% if it's a new house as opposed to an existing house. So yeah, that what I was saying before, that can mean that if you had an existing house and versus a build, and it was the same client, you could potentially get the loan approved if it was a build versus an existing house. So in some situations, it's actually easier from a credit perspective to get it approved.
Great. Awesome. Well, that probably leads on to my next question, Steph, talking about incentives. And I mean, particularly now with the likelihood of some significant disruption to our economy, and of course the need to get cash and money cycling back through our economy, what grants or other financial support is available to a person looking to, say, build a new home?
So the main thing through KiwiSaver, so people can obviously withdraw from KiwiSaver for their first home. The second part of KiwiSaver is called the Home Start Grant. So what that is effectively free money. I keep saying to people, the application could be a little bit tough online, but it's free money at the end of the day. Which means with a Home Start Grant, you have to be in KiwiSaver for a minimum of 3 years. It has to be your first home, and you have to be under the income threshold. So if you build, effectively, instead of getting $3,000 for year one, $4,000 for year two, $5,000 for year for $3,000 for year three, $4,000 for year four, $5,000 for year five, depending on how long you've actually been in KiwiSaver for, you get double the amount if it's a new build. So that means obviously 6, 8, or 10, which is a lot more, obviously, double the amount. So what that can mean is that if there's a couple that can both get Home Start Grant that have been in KiwiSaver contributing for more than 5 years, they can get $10,000 each, which is $20,000 they would not have had before for their deposit. So we maximum $10,000 for an existing home, but $20,000 for a new home. The other thing is there's caps. So there's obviously income caps, which are the same, but there's also purchase price caps for the regions, for different regions and areas around New Zealand. Now what that means is in Taranaki, for example, the region cap is 400,000, but it's 500,000 to build. So you can actually spend 100,000 more and still receive it. So the income cap's the same, but you get double the amount of your build, and the actual purchase price threshold for the land and building combined is 100,000 higher. Quite an advantage. So when we see people that are obviously looking to use their KiwiSavers, that's an extra whole 20,000 above their balances that they can use if it's a new build.
So it really makes a huge difference, particularly for those who are probably on the margins or on the thresholds normally. That extra 15, 20K makes all the difference, doesn't it, to tip them over from being impossible to possible.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess the two things combined, really, the fact that the banks can lend more money over 80% for a build. So the credit policy is a little bit not so tight because they can, and obviously the extra incentive of the purchase price being able to be higher and double the amount of Home Start Grant, overall it's pretty attractive.
Yeah, excellent. So Steph, as a finance professional, people are sitting at home, they're thinking, really keen to start the process. I'm a little bit worried. I'm not really sure what comes first. Where do I start? Looking at it both from the point of view of obviously getting finance in place, but also looking at building and land and all the rest of it. Where would you recommend people start, and what is the process or the best process in your mind for finance and then, of course, building?
So people come to us at all sorts of stages, I guess. There are people that go and see a show home in the weekend and think, great, I like the look of that house, or hey, I never really thought of building and now it looks really attractive. So people do come to us at any stage of the whole process. Sometimes people have gone all the way to just about signing a contract and then they end up coming for finance. It really does depend on the individual and how they're comfortable with the process up until then. I think the best time to come to us is right at the beginning when you're actually thinking of building. So what that means is normally those people are thinking of building. They might have seen a piece of land. They might not have seen a piece of land. They might have talked to a builder. They might not have seen a builder. It might just be literally that they're thinking, hey, I've looked out for a house around. I really can't find something I like, and I feel like building's going to be for me. So if we can get them at the start of the process is probably the best time, because what we can then do is sit down and go, okay, what land price are you looking at? And that's obviously going to depend on the area that they are in. What's the approximate price of the land around where you're looking? What is the approximate price of what you want to spend on a build? Or what is your budget? So they might come and say, okay, well, land in my areas, I don't know, I'm just going to use some rough figures, 250,000. I'm thinking really we want to spend 650 all up. So we sit down and go, okay, well, yes, 650 is going to work for you, or no, 650 is a little bit high, or actually you could actually afford up to 780. So the way that total amount is broken down is obviously an amount for the land and an amount for the build. So as an overall, we can then work out what the budget is. Then once they've got the budget, then it's obviously going to be going back to the builder, or going to see a building company, and looking for some land, which obviously a lot of building companies like yourself can help with land if you're looking for land, to get a piece of land and the build amount under that package of that amount that they can afford. And then they know there's no surprises, and they can work with the building company to then go, okay, well, this is our budget, let's work towards that. And that everyone's on the same page, everyone knows, and everyone's communicating. So there's sort of nothing that comes up that's a cost overrun, or nothing that comes up that they haven't thought of.
Yeah, I think, and from my experience too, one of the biggest fears of a person looking to build a home is fear of the unknown. So they don't necessarily, if they haven't built before, they're not sure of what costs they should be thinking of. And an interesting comment you made too is that sometimes people can actually afford to, or are able to, borrow more than they realised, and perhaps if they start looking and I guess answering questions to building companies about what they're thinking of building, and they haven't answered the finance or the budget question, they potentially are putting themselves in the wrong category or the wrong criteria.
And it's amazing, actually, Cam, because a lot of people sort of think, okay, I only wanted to spend, I'm just going to use some round figures, I only want to spend 700, but they look at something and they know it's going to cost 750, and then we kind of go, okay, well, 750 is within your budget, you can borrow up to that amount with your deposit, but also, did you actually realise that the extra repayments are only X amount per week? A lot of people don't realise, especially with interest rates being so low, that the extra amount to get it to that level of that build is actually going to cost them an extra $25 a week. And so they sort of look at it and go, okay, well, I didn't realise it was such a small amount, if I'm going to be honest, on my outgoings. So yes, I will go for that little bit extra to get what I want.
Yeah. So probably that comment really leads on well to my next question, Steph, around paying the mortgage. One of the big fears too for people may be, looking to build. Could be a 6-month process, it could be an 8-month process, and they've either got to pay a mortgage on an existing home or rent somewhere to live in the meantime. How can the average person, or even anybody really, afford to pay rent and build a new home at the same time?
It's great that you've asked that question, Cam, because a lot of clients ask that right at the beginning. So there are different situations. There are people that are living in an existing house that want to build, and they don't want to move out of their existing house or sell their existing house until the new house is ready. And there are other situations where they're keeping the existing house as a rental property, and they're going to rent that property out, and they're going to move to the new one. And the other situations, obviously, if they're renting and then they're obviously building. So in all those situations, obviously you want to keep the outgoings down as much as possible from the beginning, while you've got an extra cost of a mortgage, while you're not receiving rent potentially on the house that you are going to keep and rent out. So you want to keep it down as low as possible. So what happens is, as I was saying before at the beginning, we have one loan, generally speaking, for the land and one generally for the build. So the land loan at the start, so let's, for example, say it's a $250,000 piece of land. All the cash that you have for the deposit goes into the land at the beginning. So the loan that you're paying on the land, the balance is actually quite low that you're actually paying, because all your cash is gone at the start. So that's obviously going to keep the repayments down. We can also look at interest-only options and 30-year terms to keep those payments down. So that's the first part. Then the second part is the build. So that's a little bit further down the track normally. Not always, but normally. So that draws down progressively, as I was saying at the beginning. So that second loan, let's just say the dwelling build is $500,000. There might be, for example, 10 payments throughout that $500,000 of $50,000 each. So as each one draws down and as each invoice comes from the builder, that gets paid, so that you only owe what you actually have paid the builder at the time. And again, that can be interest only and 30-year terms to keep the repayments down, or interest just, obviously. So what that means is that at the start of the build, you don't owe much, therefore your payments are not much, but towards the end, it's getting up to obviously the balance of the full amount of what the loan's going to be. And that's right at the point where you obviously are about to move in, so you're not going to hopefully be renting anymore. You've got a tenant for your rental property, or you've put your house on the market ready for sale and you've got a settlement underway. So that's the way that basically we keep the costs down, because at the end of the day, when we present an application to the bank, we talk about the end result. We don't actually talk about that halfway result whereby you're going to be paying for half of the mortgage and then paying rent at the same time. Because at the end of the day, you are going to be paying the end result. And also, if you want to put your house on the market towards the end, because you know that your house is going to sell quickly and you don't want to be somewhere, having to find somewhere in between, we always look at it and go to the bank, okay, well, the plan is to sell the house. The house is not on the market yet, but let's just say for whatever reason that you can't sell the house, you could always rent it out for X amount, which means the rent plus the personal income will cover all the outgoings for both the mortgages. And that's never the intention, but the bank likes to have a fallback position. And that's absolutely nothing to do with current circumstances. That's the way it's been done for as long as I've been lending. For whatever reason, if they can't sell the house, they could rent it out, still cover both, which means the bank says, okay, we can potentially lend 100% of the build cost, even if they haven't sold their house yet and they do intend to sell it.
Excellent.
So it's all about keeping those costs down. As I say, a 30-year term or interest only certainly does that. And because it's drawn down progressively with all the cash at the start, that amount is not going to be too much, obviously, to take as an outgoing.
Yeah. And just picking up on your point you mentioned now about that now is, it's with interest rates so low, that problem, if you like, the interest cost of a mortgage that's slowly building up as the build happens is not as great as perhaps it was 3 or 4 years ago even.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so the next question really would be, why is now a good time? Why would now be a good time to build? Specifically relating, of course, to the situation we see ourselves in with significant health risks around the world and also somewhat unknown economic impacts.
Well, it's such an unprecedented time, as we all know, but the list is quite long, and I'll summarise a couple of things. Firstly, obviously, being in the finance industry, one thing that we are always looking at and always talking about is obviously interest rates. So interest rates are low, and the Reserve Bank has pledged to keep interest rates low for the next 12 months. So if you lock in your mortgage in the next 12 months, you're certainly hoping that you're going to get a rate. The 1 year rate's 3.09% at the moment. The 2 year rate's around 3.2ish. So the rates are, to be honest, I never thought that we'd get down in my lifetime of actually working in finance down to that low. So interest rates, obviously, if you actually put it on a rate calculator, what you're actually paying in interest, if you're going to build while you're renting, for example, you will be very surprised at what a low amount of outgoing that's going to be for you based on current rates. Again, being a banker and always being in the finance industry, I'm always going to promote the fact that when you build, you're exempt from Reserve Bank restrictions. So just what I was saying before, that you won't have to be in that pool of money for borrowing over 80% for your first home buyer, that you'll receive double the amount of the Home Start grant, and that the purchase price threshold is higher if you are building as opposed to an existing home. And I guess the other reasons are probably not so much finance reasons. They are reasons that, I guess, when demand is so high and supply is probably not as high as what the demand is as it has been up until obviously very recently, things have changed and it's a new stage going forward. It is very difficult to get someone to do something in a timely manner and the quality perhaps that you would like if you're one of 100 clients. But if you're one of a lesser and smaller group of clients, you're obviously going to get that time to have a relationship more so with the tradesmen, with the building companies, and with everybody that's associated with building that house. So I guess I'll use my own example and not to sort of drag it out too much, but I actually built a house in the GFC. So I was one of many people that were planning houses around the time of the GFC and bought a section on the side of the hill, which was potentially dynamite to build on, and it was, but we got there, with a huge retaining wall and a huge cost to build. So when the GFC hit, I had the choice to stop or push ahead. Many people said stop, others said push ahead, and I'm a pretty headstrong person, and I decided push ahead was the way to go. And one of the reasons I decided to push ahead was because I knew that there were going to be others that didn't push ahead, and I knew that everybody was going to turn up on time and my quality of workmanship was going to be very high, and the building company that we're working with in Wellington would have less people on their plates because they were overwhelmed before that, and they'd have more attention to detail with us, which was absolutely true. So Interest rates dropped dramatically in the time we're building that house, because it took 2 years from beginning to end physically, because they had a retaining wall that took the best part of a year in winter to build. Now, not every build's like that, don't get me wrong. It was a very complex one. But the level of service that we received and the quality of workmanship, because there were less people building, was really awesome. Interest rates dropped as well. It went from 10.95% floating and dropped about 4%. So our cost to build came down considerably. Which obviously we're not going to see a drop like that in interest rates now, but wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit more of a drop. But you get what you want in a build, and the quality of workmanship, the time we spent with the building company, the relationship we have with everybody. I believe the experience was fantastic due to the fact that there weren't as many people building at the time.
So really what you're saying, aren't you, is that perversely or ironically, building during a time of depression or recession, if you're in a position to do so and it's within your long-term plans, the risk is mitigated, you're actually going to get a better result and probably a better experience. And I can certainly vouch for that from being on the supply side. That reality is that, you know, up until very recently, and our own business has got a significant forward workload, so it doesn't change a lot, but the mathematics of supply and demand are simple. If you have too much work or more work than you can handle on a normal basis, at some point you run the risk of quality issues coming into play. And of course, the other risk is things drag out. You've got people going in different directions, and managing that as a building company, it's not always easy to turn work away. And so there's just a natural inclination to take on work and sort of grow with the demand. But of course, you start getting into B grade and C grade supply chain and subcontractors. So that's where the risk of quality and time delays come in. And, you know, building companies do get a lot of flack, or the building industry gets a flack. But unfortunately, the boom bust nature of our industry simply means that as things grow, quality diminishes, and as it shrinks, quality increases, just like you said. So it's good to hear your experience.
Yeah, I've actually, in saying that too, Cam, I've actually built in both environments. So we just recently completed a house north of Wellington, and in boom time, and the time frames it took, and I'm not saying the quality of the product's not great, because it is, but the time frames were definitely pushed out, and it was definitely getting a little bit frustrating. But it wasn't the building company's fault, it was just the way that it is. So I've done it in both, and I know which is a better experience. The other thing also, that house was built to live in. It wasn't built as an investment. So I guess that's what I asked myself at the time. Does it matter if, you know, it's not like I'm going to sell this house in the next 5 minutes. The plan is to be here for the medium term. Does it matter if it goes down a little bit in value and then goes back up again? No, it doesn't matter so much. So it's all about the intention of what you're actually going to do with the dwelling, with the property.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Steph, I really appreciate you've covered some great points of interest there. And I suppose the one remaining question I have is, how can SMM help a person looking to get finance to build a new home? What's the point of contact and the process that you run in your business?
Thanks, Cam. So at SMM, we go to the bank for clients and arrange their finance for them. So what that means is we have a really large range of choice of where we can finance people's builds, customers' builds. You would think that one credit policy is the same across the board for all banks, but that's absolutely not true. So some things that we can get approved at one main bank, we can't get approved at another main bank, and we're obviously very talented in knowing which bank is right for that client's circumstances to get their box ticked, and also financially what's going to be best for them in terms of interest rates and cash contributions and stuff. So we spend a lot of time financing builds at SMM, our team does. We have a guide called Building Your Home, Financing Your Build. It's about a 19-page document that you can download online. It's actually a really good start point, just have a read through that. So if I'm having a general conversation with somebody that might be thinking, hey, I'm not really ready to chat yet, but I've sort of looked at a show home and I thought that this might be, we always point them in the direction of having a look at that first, but always wanting to set up a meeting to sit down at the moment via Zoom, via telephone, obviously if we can in person, although we do a lot remotely anyway, and just sit down and just go over what the customer wants to achieve. So in that situation, the main thing would be trying to set a budget for them, making sure they've got enough deposit, working out what their income service is, because at the end of the day, that's what clients want to know. They want to know, can I build that house? Can I afford to? What's my limit? Where can I go to? And we can give them those answers pretty damn quickly.
Excellent. And what's your web address, Steph?
So it's Stephanie Murray, StephanieMurray.mortgage.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for your time today. And as I knew it would be, it's been very helpful to understand a little bit about where we are, where we might be heading, and of course some of the reasons why we shouldn't all potentially stop what we are planning, but to get good advice and talk to the professionals about our options to build. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Cam.